Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I've got a full tank review for you on this. It's the AAT60. It's a tier 8 American premium medium tank. We don't have any of those in the game, right? And this vehicle is actually looking like, for me and my playstyle, one of the best premium tanks that Wargaming has released in a good while. It has 105mm with 320 alpha damage, 10 degrees of gun depression over the front. The vehicle's pretty quick, it's got really good gun handling, enough view range. It's the all-purpose tank. The only thing it really doesn't have is good armor, but when you are using your 10 degrees of gun depression, the turret isn't horrific in that situation, and it's quite small as well, at least with regards to the turret, which makes it at least a tricky tank to reliably hit with no flappy rounded edges to make it a really big, easy target. Today, I'm going to be letting you know whether the AAT60 is the new best premium tank inside the game, or is this really the tank of World of Tanks? Possibly. What? Yes! Yes! Ugh! Hopefully we're going to be doing that to some of our opponents today, chopping them up with the AAT60. So I want to compare the AAT60 to the Lansen. And let me clarify, the Lansen is a tank that I think it was just last year or the year before, I managed to get 2 new experience records pretty much back to back in. The Lansen holds my second and third highest experience games of all time in the 100,000 battles that I've played. So to say that I vibe with the Lansen would be a little bit of an understatement. And the only thing that managed to dethrone this Swedish awesome premium medium tank was actually the filthy Churchill 3 game that I had. But that probably dethroned the Lansen purely because of the 50% extra experience that tank gets. And it's not just me who seems to be doing well in the Lansen. If we take a look at just a raw win ratio, the Lansen is in the upper third of all of the premium mediums in the game. And if we take a look at win ratio difference, the Lansen is probably in the upper quarter of vehicles. It's an underrated premium that isn't very popular inside the game. And so when you take a look at the statistics of the AAT60, keep in mind that the Lansen is definitely, I'd say, at least a B, if not an A grade premium tank. So right off the bat, the AAT60 has 105mm with the same alpha damage as the Lansen, but it just has way better penetration, 230 instead of 208, and just an extra 5% damage per minute at 2,200. That is phenomenal for a tier 8 premium medium, and it actually gives it one of the best damage per minutes on any tier 8 medium in the game, only behind vehicles like the Panther 88, the Kampfpanzer, Object 416, the CDC. But for the AAT60 to have 320 alpha damage, none of those vehicles do have more. And that's what makes this a very interesting prospect. The premium rounds on the AAT60 are also 285mm of heat, and the standard at 230 are APCR, which actually get very nice shell velocity of 1,150, so a great ammunition selection here. It doesn't carry quite as much ammunition as the Lansen, but as we can see, this thing outperforms the Lansen clearly with regards to firepower. But when we go on to gun handling as well, it's got 2 seconds aim time, better than Lansen's 2.5. 0.35 accuracy, better than the Lansen's 0.38. 0.12 gun handling and 0.1 on the turret, meaning that it completely destroys the Lansen. It's as if the Lansen was using 2 sets of vertical stabilizers, or like a Bond-vert stabs and a rotation device. That is how good the gun handling is on the AAT60. It honestly feels like it's more of a tier 10 medium tank down at tier 8. Not like an incredible one, like an Object 140 or something along the lines of an M48A5 pattern, but still incredibly good. And it means that you can not use vert stabs on this tank, and your gun handling will be better than a Lansen that was. However, the mobility is really the big difference between these two tanks. The AAT60 is limited to 44 backwards, but 44 forwards, but 22 backwards. So that actually makes this faster backwards than the Lansen, but slower forwards than Lansen. But the real problem with this tank is the power to weight. It's 17, which isn't terrible for a medium tank, but the Lansen's 28. It feels like that's more of a light tank, whereas the AAT60 feels definitely more of a medium within that regard. Also, the terrain resistances are just a little bit worse than Lansen, making this feel much less agile, and you truly are more of a medium rather than a light within that regard. Luckily, you actually have better turret traverse than the Lansen, and your tank traverse is decent, which means that you have similar traverse speeds as the Lansen. So now let's take a look at the armor of this tank. 70 at the front, 50 at the side, 150 at the front of the turret, 50 at the side of the turret. That's just better than the Lansen in pretty much every way. However, when we take a look at this thing's armor, you might notice that upper hull, it isn't ricocheting anything at all. Everything's going to pen this, even tier 6 tanks. The lower plate is trash. But as soon as you start to actually use your gun depression, the armor becomes a little bit bit better. All heat rounds will just absolutely destroy this thing, but you will be ricocheting a few shells on the upper hull, and it does have some pretty funky auto ricochet angles with it. But I guess a lot of you are looking at the turret, because the turret is going to make or break this tank. Now, when you are using your 10 degrees of gun depression, the whole of the upper part of the vehicle does become a ricochet, but you have got problems to the left and to the right of the gun mantlet, and also the actual turret towards the left and the right of the mantlet it's awful. There's no other way to say it. The vehicle is quite nice with having this angled armor here though, but keep in mind it's only 40 millimeters thick, meaning that will get overmatched by 121 millimeter caliber guns. The side, you can side scrape in this tank, but really if you better have better DPM than your opponents and being trying to outtrade them. This thing's armor is not its speciality. But when we take a look at the Lancen's armor model, I'd say all in all, the AAT60 looks like it has better performing armor than the Lancen. The Lancen does have this nice auto ricochet off the mid plate, but the whole of its side armor is 40 rather than 50, and this gets overmatched by 120 millimeter caliber guns. I'd say the AAT60 heavily wins with regards to the armor loadout. It also has 50 more hit points, so it even has a slight durability advantage over the Lancen. Now on to the miscellaneous stats. The camo rating is a little worse than the Lancen, but it's still really good for a medium tank. This is a sneaky medium and it will do very well in bushes. Probably one of the reasons why I do so well with the Lancen is because it has great camo and it allows you to perform a bit more like an aggressive medium or even a light tank on those bushy maps. However, the AAT60 has an advantage over the Lancen, which I really cannot overstate how much of an advantage it is. 390 meters view range compared to 380. On my Lancen, I quite often feel that I have to use coated optics, because even if I was to go and put Bond vents on the Lancen, I still couldn't get up to 445 meters view range, and that's with a premium consumable. The AAT60, however, never has to use coated optics if you're willing to use a premium consumable, because you can get up to about 450 or 454 meters view range. So you can, instead of taking coated optics, take a vision system, or still take an exhaust instead, and then you leapfrog the Lancen with regards to the camo rating. And so a tremendous advantage for the AAT60, and also to have half the chance to be set on fire when your engine gets hit. Look at this thing's stats. It has better firepower than the Lancen, it has much better gun handling than the Lancen, it has better armor than the Lancen. I'd say it has comparable, if not better, miscellaneous stats, because it has that better view range, which allows it to take an exhaust instead of taking a vision system. And the only not a vision system, coated optics, but the only aspect of this tank that really sucks is the fact that its mobility is more like a slower medium tank than the Lancen, which is one of the faster medium tanks. All in all, I'd say this thing destroys the Lancen statistically. So how would I set this vehicle up? One easy pick. Turbo, vents, gun rammer. This will amplify the firepower of the vehicle. It will give me enough view range with the vents. It's going to help my accuracy a little bit. And the turbo is going to take this from being a more sluggish medium to being at least relatively okay. 49 kilometers an hour is perfectly playable. And considering this tank's gun handling is so awesome, I don't feel that I'm missing out by not taking vert stabs on this tank like I would do on the Nemesis, for example. Crew-wise, this vehicle will just fit your M48 A5 pattern crew. Unfortunately, if you don't have the M48A5 pattern, I'd really recommend getting a premium loader on this tank, because the loader is also the radio operator. For your commander skills, just take Brothers in Arms, Recon, Concealment, and Repairs, Eagle Eye Firefighting as extras. For your gunner skills, Brothers in Arms, Concealment, Repairs, Snapshot is okay, but I'd probably rather focus on Deadeye with this thing's great rate of fire and designated target, as the vehicle's turret dispersion is pretty good anyway. On your driver, Brothers in Arms, Concealment, Repairs, Smooth Ride, it's got pretty good gun handling to begin with. Off-road driving, it's got okay ground resistances, but you could give them an advantage. Really low pressure on your driver on here, but on your loader, big high pressure. You need Brothers in Arms, Repairs, Concealment, and situational awareness before you're even comfortable. Safe stowage will really help for ammo racks, and intuition almost mandatory on this vehicle because it has access to those really good heat rounds, which are way more flexible in certain scenarios than the AP rounds. Field mods on this tank, I am on my main account, so I don't have all of them yet, but I know exactly what I'm going to pick. Firstly, module durability. Then I'm going to take accuracy. For this one, I'm definitely going to go for the camo. This is not like a side scraper like the Nemesis is. I'm going to definitely take the camo, and that will pump it up to 29 without an exhaust. And for my bonus slot, I will take the vision. And I forgot to tell you what my second set of equipment would be on this tank. My second set of equipment will be a Scouty build, where I'm taking a vision system and an exhaust, and that's why I'm taking the the scouting slot to boost that vision system working. And the vents, even if you don't have bounty vents, will fit very well inside the mobility slot to go along with it. Anyway, that is the AAT60. Let's give it a trial by combat. So here we go, we're rolling out in the AAT60 in a full tier 8 matchup, and before we begin I want to make a quick comment on the style that you see on my AAT60. This is a style that is available inside the loot boxes. Interestingly enough, if you gamble to be able to get your hands on this vehicle and you get lucky, or you just buy enough boxes so you get all of the other vehicles before you inevitably get this one out of your 50th set of boxes, you don't even get the style. This style, it took me like 27 boxes to be able to get it, but I read in my Twitch chat that some people were opening hundreds of boxes to be able to get the style. So do not think that this tank comes with the style if you are unfortunate enough to be able to get it inside the boxes on your way towards it. Again, I've talked all about this in my YouTube video from yesterday, but I want to clarify once again, Wargaming should really be ashamed of themselves for having random chances to be able to get styles inside loot boxes for a product that is new. It's almost as if they felt like the tank was good enough as it is without the style, and that they wanted people to possibly have to spend way more to be able to get the funky style. And I think the style is really cool. One thing you might notice is, no, do not look outside your window. There are not helicopters over flying your house. There are no planes. It does sound really weird. These are, I guess, like the warp cores. I think that's what they're called. Warp cores. People from Star Wars, I'm only joking, Star Trek will let me know in the comment down below. But I think Wargaming have actually done a really good job with the sound of this 3D style. So that isn't the default in the tank. And also, do you see how you can see through the gun there? That looks pretty funky as well. Let me clarify that this tank, it will perform just as well, even if you don't get the style. And for all of you that hate the look of this vehicle, you can change the fictional camos off in your settings if you don't like the look of it and you don't want to see it. And if you get one, you don't even have to use the style on it yourself. It's going to be just as good. Okay, with all of that said and done, let's focus on the AAT60. So this vehicle is best suited to either being hulled down and just grinding out a tank that's in front of it, or alternatively, being a bit of a predator at mid to long range. It's got good camo, good view range, with a good crew, you're going to do very well with out-spotting your opponents. And because of that wonderful 0.35 accuracy, although 0.35 isn't exactly wonderful, but it's good. This vehicle's not even too bad at sniping. Combine that with some decent shell velocity, and you can whip in your shots, and when you get confident with this gun, it's going to reward you. 1,150 meters a second shell velocity is absolutely fine. It's not like you've got 1,400 like you're a tier 10 medium tank. But remember, you are at tier 8, so we can't have all of the bells and whistles and advantages of tanks that are 2 tiers higher, at least yet, with regards to the pay to win inside World of Tanks. So we're looking for a shot on the ISU-152K here, kind of worried about the tanks that are going to be towards the south. Looks like that shell actually goes a little bit high, but that's because we're aiming up at the distance behind, and so the game is trying to give extra lead or extra height for the shell drop-off as it's going to reach a target where it thinks that I'm aiming an extra 100 meters behind where I actually am. So I should have probably dropped my gun or my reticle just a little bit more there. So hopefully we can get this Kalana, and a bit of a mistake there by me. I didn't see that second ridge from behind the trees, and I even have a look here. And even to me, it's really hard to see like that second ridge from behind the trees. You can clearly see the one that's dipping down into the trees, but not the one above. But wow, this gun, it just slaps. It really does. The gun handling on this tank is just wonderful. And to free up that equipment slot to be able to invest into something else means that we can mitigate one of the tank's extreme disadvantages, or we can amplify one of its strengths. In this case, we're taking a gun rammer to be able to improve that wonderful rate of fire. The vents will just make everything about the tank better, and so we don't have to waste an equipment slot on vert stabs. Definitely feels nice when your vehicle does have that good gun handling. And let me clarify once again, this tank's gun handling is so good, it's like a Lansen that's using 2 pieces of vert stabs. It's like a double vert stabs Lansen. So instead, I can focus on taking a turbo, which I would never take on a Lansen, to now mean that my vehicle is not quite as fast as a Lansen upslope, but at least up to its maximum top speed of now of 49 kilometers an hour, I'm pretty much as fast as a Lansen within that regard. And so this tank, without vert stabs, still has 20% better gun handling than a Lansen with vert stabs, but the same speed because you just change it out for a turbo. So it's almost as if this tank has like 4 equipment slots compared to a Lansen. And also that better view range means we don't have to waste it on coated optics as well. So we can take either the vents or take a gun rammer on this tank. And so my usual Lansen build is gun rammer, vert stabs, and coated optics. But with 2 builds on the Lansen, I think that I'd probably rather take like gun rammer, vert stabs, and vents for like a combat-y build. And then my second build, I'll probably take something like vents, coated optics, and a vision system to really have some Omega tier view range within that regard. It's just so nice to be playing a medium that it looks more like a concept, doesn't it? And really, this tank kind of feels a bit like a concept that if you were using a turbo on. Of course, you don't have the 400 alpha, you've got 320, you don't have quite as good of a rate of fire. Well, so I should say you've got a better rate of fire, but you've got worse damage per minute all in all. But this tank, it's great. It's really, really strong. The APCR rounds just feel nice. To have those extra heat rounds would be lovely. Looks like we do indeed possibly blind fire. That should go to T56, bringing them down to 15 hit points. And while my team is down by 1,500 hit points and down by 3 tanks, I was feeling really confident in this game. I felt like this tank had all of the statistics that I needed to be able to possibly carry. I've got the gun depression, I've got enough armor so that I can take a hit at least occasionally. I've got the hit points. It's not as if I'm some fragile tank with 1,250, so I could probably be able to take a hit from this Skoda T56. And to have those APCR rounds, have the heat rounds for going through thick armored surfaces. Like, goodness gracious, we're talking about 285 millimeters of heat pen here. And while it's not as nice as something like an Iron Arnie, for example, with those 300 millimeters of heat pen, or even the 122TM with 299, 285 is still very decent for a tank which packs really good damage per minute. Because everybody knows the Iron Arnie has 1,600, and I think the 122TM has like 1,350. Those tanks, they're very reliable with their damage, but they don't do their damage often. This tank, it's reliable with its damage, but it's also dealing its damage often. And that is what is very powerful about this tank. So I'm asking the Boras to come in to try and hunt this T28. I'm a little bit worried because there's 3 tank destroyers in the enemy team, and 2 of them were last spotted inside their base. We've got to worry about the Charioteer and the ISU-152K. The Borask, called Goskop Anime, manages to actually finish off the T28. Who is not a winner inside this game, although maybe their team is going to win. And oh, pressure moment here. Pressure moment. Hard to miss that shot when you're above it with 0.35 accuracy in this kind of gun handling. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful tank. So now we're done spamming the heat. We're going to go back to loading some APCR. And the shell cost on this tank, it's not exactly cheap, 1,065. That's not bad for 320 alpha. It's not as good as something like on the Nemesis that we saw yesterday. That thing has really cheap ammo. And because you can also use the high explosive rounds on that tank, which are like half price but deal extra damage with 90 pen, yeah, the Nemesis is a very economical tank. I don't think this tank is going to end up being the cheapest to play, but I definitely think it's not going to be like the most expensive. You can do some really good work with the APCR rounds on this vehicle, and to have 320 alpha damage instead of something like 240 on the Patriot, yeah, it works. Just look at this gun handling, man. It's just great. And this is without vert stabs, so for all of you vert stabs enjoyers out there, I'm sure that you will take vert stabs on this tank, and you literally won't have to stay still at all. I guess the only problem that we've seen so far in this game is that, yeah, the turret armor failed against that G-Saw. And unless you are using that 10 degrees of gun depression, the turret armor's not great. But this thing, it just feels like this be-all, go everywhere, do everything medium tank. It is my kind of vehicle. It really is. I feel so flexible in this tank with that 10 degrees. I feel like I can go everywhere. I feel like I got the ammunition. It is ticking all of my boxes. And for it to have at least reasonable turret armor with pretty darn good camo as well. Oh, boys and girls, you looked at the statistics of this tank and you hopefully would have seen that it's basically just a better Lansen with regards to everything apart from a little bit of speed. But for all of the things that I've already talked about in this video, to all intents and purposes, it's as fast as a Lansen, unless you're mad and you want to use a turbo in a Lansen, you don't want to focus on the tank's horrible gun handling, for example. But it's just like a Lansen, as fast as a Lansen, that then ends up with just better gun handling overall and just way better firepower, better rate of fire, better accuracy, better ammunition, access to to some great choices there for APCR and heat. Just way better than the Lancer. And so that is terrifying for me, because remember what I said and showed you, that this vehicle holds my second and third best experience games of all time in the 100,000 battles that I've played. And spiritually, I think it holds my best experience game, because experience records with the Churchill 3, they don't really count, at least in my opinion. And so, boom, baby. What is this tank going to end up at statistically, I feel? And not just for me, but also for the entire community. If it is just a better Lancer, and I just showed you that the Lancer has some of the better statistics inside the game, probably like top third or maybe even top quarter of medium tanks. If this vehicle is just a Lancer plus, this thing could be capable of some really crazy things. So this was my second ever game in the AAT60. We managed to get ourselves an ace tanker, a Top Gun, a Confederate medal. We managed to do nearly 4,000 damage, 1,280 base experience, and we made ourselves 108,000 credits profit, although that was with a credit booster. So the second game I'm going to show you today in the AAT60 is against tier 10 tanks, and on this map I'm actually going to end up choosing to use a vision system and an exhaust, because I feel so strongly that we want to try and do everything that we can to try and prevent a stalemate over towards the northwest of this map. Now, with this build, it's going to take me a little bit too long to get there. So, you know, if you absolutely hate vents, you might want to take a turbo with this build as well, so you can try and contest those early positions. But I take this more for your maps like Malinovka, Moravanka, your Prokhorovka. But I still feel like when I'm a tier 8 tank, if I can manage to try and break that stalemate that could occur on the northwest of the highway map, maybe I can manage to make this thing work. And also just to show you what this vehicle's capabilities are with regards to that camo and being a little bit sneaky. And we're off. The TVP manages to get one shot into our side, and we miss the Czechoslovakian tier 10 medium tank. We managed to get a little bit of vision there, though. It looks like the Char probably gets a 390 damage shot into the TVP. And now it's just going to be as simple as getting a tank with 10 degrees of gun depression above a TVP. We're going to put a round in, kill their commander. And usually I'd have to wait for a reset here, but considering that the Skoda is going up, you know what, I'm going to take my chances as well and go after them. And suddenly this TVP is wishing that they hadn't pushed forwards. Although, you know what, pushing this flank on this map, it's never really that bad of an idea. It's just more of a case of who has more tanks that manage to get there. So we're going to reload a heat round here. And one thing I'd like to highlight is that I didn't actually mention that this vehicle actually has really bad gun depression over the side and over the rear of this vehicle. So it's not terrible like a Nemesis, but you don't have gun depression over the back. Accordingly, if you're engaging these vehicles, try and take advantage of that. And I just feel so confident with this gun already. I think that was an APCR run right through the side of the T-54 after the first heat round. This gun slaps. It really does. It's beautiful. I love it. I cannot state how much this feels like a sweet spot of a gun inside World of Tanks for me. And to have it at tier 8, this gun would be okay at tier 9. It wouldn't be great, it wouldn't be like 10 out of 10, but it would work at tier 9. I wouldn't want to have it at tier 10. So we're pushing forwards here. We get lit up, and I'm really surprised about that. Maybe it's the T-49 in the center. Maybe it was the Kunzenpanzer who was working the bushes there. Because I'm packing like about maybe 36% camo rating on the move here. It's not bad at all. Maybe the T-49 catches us. The Borsig shuts down the Skoda T-27. That means that the Borsig is most likely in these bushes here. And maybe it was the Borsig who managed to see me as well. So we're going to get forwards here. We're going to spot a Kunzenpanzer. And I'm a little bit confused. Why did my sixth sense not go off? And at the time, I didn't really understand why. You're going to see why later on in this game. So I'm going to fire HE rounds at the building here to just knock it down to then hopefully allow my team to be able to engage the Kunzenpanzer. And then, oh, there we go. The AAT60 has that good camo that it practically needed to get proxy spotted by the Char there. Even though I'm using a vision system, even though I've got like 454 meters view range or whatever I have, I was unable to see that AAT60 in that bush, showing you just how sneaky this tank is. And spoilers, if I show you the post-game stats or not, that remains to be seen. But that AAT60 on the enemy team actually ended up getting a lot of damage as well as spotting from that position. doing some fantastic stuff. And it looks like the Char Future 4 is giving us a little bit of feedback on what they think about this tank. It looks like Farmer 1 isn't exactly going to be farming the AAT60s. He's really going for it right now in chat. I'm not sure if any of you are going to be feeling like that in the comments down below. This is a really interesting tank. We're just dominating here with the vision system exhaust. I can see them, they can't see us, and it's just about being the predator. Hopefully we can manage to finish off the Borsig now. Don't even get spotted. That's what 36% camera rating will do for you. And while it is sad to not use the gun rammer on this tank, I'm so happy I picked the vision system exhaust, and it is completely paying off, like massively paying off here. I was almost a little bit unlucky that I didn't manage to cross there. I didn't expect that AAT60 to be in that position, but we're just doing work. But it doesn't matter how much work we do, the Char Future 4 on the enemy team is going to finish them off. So it doesn't look like there's some big curse that Char Future 4s are unable to handle the AAT60s, at least the ones on the enemy team at least. So we get shut down here, but this was a cracking game throughout. Like 4,400 combined in what, 4.5 minutes in a tier 10 matchup, and we were able to make the progressive play. And even when you take like a vision system exhaust on this tank, it still feels like its gun handling is great. It still feels like it has that rate of fire and DPM. It is a truly brutal tank. So another ace tanker here on highway, although it's early days and this won't be an ace tanker tomorrow, probably when people start getting statistics in it. 4,400 combined. Char Future 4 on my team had a hard time, and unfortunately I can't show you, but the AAT60 on the enemy team did a great job with a lot of spotting and a lot of damage, and we make 80,000 credits profit. So all in all, the AAT60. Now, I don't know if I'm looking at this tank with rose-tinted glasses, but I think it's an awesome tank. I really like this vehicle. It has statistics in all of the areas that I care about to be forwards and to dominate games. I think the fact that the tank has good soft stats frees up your equipment to be a bit creative and to adapt your tank depending on the map that you want to play. And considering how strong and how high I rate the Lansen, this tank has to be at least A tier, if not S tier in World of Tanks. However, let me clarify that from my Twitch stream today, it was quite interesting to see people's opinions of this vehicle before I released the tank review, because I don't want to live in an echo chamber. Quite a few people were struggling, thinking, oh, the gun just doesn't feel like it has that punch, or it doesn't feel like it has that turret armor. And players like that are going to do way better in something like a 122 TM, or even better in something like a Mittlerer. This is not a vehicle for people who aren't willing to take risks or to try and outshoot their enemies. This is a vehicle for people who want to relentlessly grind down their opponents and use the vehicle's well-rounded and impressive statistics in many areas to just dominate the battlefield. So this tank, it's not going to be for everyone. If you've played a Lansen and you thought the Lansen was your worst nightmare, then you're probably not going to do well in this. However, if you're the kind of person who thought Lansen's a pretty good tank, it's a solid vehicle, then this is basically a Lansen for 2024. And so this, it's tricky. I would be very surprised if this tank doesn't end up with some of the best statistics for any of the medium tanks inside the game. Eventually, after people get over it being new and not knowing how to play it, and all the casual players dumping around inside loot boxes, just having no idea how to play the vehicle. However, I'm of a split opinion about a couple of things. Firstly, a vehicle this good, I think a lot of people would want to get their hands on it, and I do expect that a lot of people are going to go to this tank from this tank review, and they're going to go, hey, how do I go and get this tank? And then they're going to go on Wargaming's website and see that unless they have all of these vehicles, and even if you do have all 8 of these vehicles, of which, don't be confused, this is the M4190 without the Grand Finals edition, you will have to gamble 50 loot crates a time to get one of these tanks. And until you've got every single one of the other vehicles, there's no guarantee in your 50 boxes you're going to get the AAT60. So, Wargaming, it's disgusting. Just please, I made a whole video about it yesterday. Sell these tanks individually, or at least if you really want to, even though I'd hate for you to bundle them with a load of other stuff that people have to purchase, but if you really feel like you want to make $100 from each one of your new tanks, I can't believe we're saying this, $100 would get you a collector's edition in some like games of the year that have happened over the last few years. But if Wargaming, please just allow your community to purchase your new content without forcing them to become tank collectors. It's disgusting, it's predatory, and it makes me feel bad that I have to be honest and rate this tank so highly for me and my playstyle and my feeling about the vehicle. Because I undoubtedly know that if Wargaming release, and in my opinion, an overpowered, overtuned vehicle like this, there'll be people out there who feel like they have to go and dump $500 into World of Tanks to be able to get it. And that is where World of Tanks becomes a pay-to-win gacha game that is very expensive. So ladies and gents, irrelevant of how I review this tank today and how I think it's a very good vehicle, and I'm going to very much enjoy having this on my account, and it'll probably be one of my go-to tanks for just blowing off a little bit of steam, please don't get mugged into gambling and getting a whole load of other stuff that you may or may not want. It would make, even if you've got all of these vehicles, it's going to be $50 or $100 to be able to get this tank. It is not worth it. Go and spend it on a bunch of other things that will probably matter a lot more to you in the long run. The final thing that I want to say about the AAT60 is I don't really think the community will be that annoyed about this tank, and that is because it doesn't have the highest alpha. It doesn't have the best armor. It's not the fastest. It doesn't have the best gun depression. It's got 10 degrees, but it's not the best. It doesn't have so many aspects of the tank where other vehicles do better. And so it's not going to be like people crying about the BZ176. And firstly, let me clarify. I cry about the BZ176. I think that tank's disgusting, and you have every right to be angry at Wargaming for the BZ176 and to cry about it. But my point is that I think the AAT60 is overpowered, but it doesn't have any one individual aspect. It's just tuned too highly across the board. And what I think that means is that it's not going to be a tank that a lot of people end up crying about, because it's not going to have unbeatable armor. It's not going to have insane alpha damage that just chonks you hugely. But trust me, you will, or you may not notice this thing chipping away and definitely influencing battles and turning it into their team's favor. So I guess you better just hope that you're either playing this one or there's not too many of them on the enemy team. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was my full tank review on the AAT60. Really hope you enjoyed it and you found it useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the AAT60. Where do you think it's going to end up on this win ratio difference or win ratio list? Do you think it's going to start to compete towards the top of this list? Or do you think really that's for tanks that have armor or have autoloaders? And just a reminder that earlier on today, I've published a full tank review on the other loot box tank, the new one, the Nemesis, which is the British medium. So definitely recommend checking that out. Or if you want to know my full opinion on the loot box madness that Wargaming has been putting out recently, I question whether World of Tanks is now classified as a gacha game. So thank you all very much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.